What's the most pain you have ever experienced? Sorry to be so specific, but I had a huge spiked kidney stone make it to the exit, meatus, but it was too big to come out all the way. I didn't have insurance at the time, so the doctor put some mild topical anesthetic on it, grabbed his forceps, and yanked until it came out. I almost blacked out from the pain. I yelled so loud my SO heard me from the waiting room. This. Kidney stones are the worst pain I've ever felt. And I've had dental access, a boob job, and have insane migraine cluster headaches. But no pain compares to kidney stones. I had one, the size of a peppercorn, wake me in the middle of the night. I was shaking, sweating, and thought my appendix had burst. Once in the ER at 3 a.m., I was told after my CT scan that the stone was already at the opening of my urethra and they could not get it out via surgery now. I had to pass it naturally. The doctor prescribed me 20 Norcos and said that it should pass within a day or so with a big uptake in water consumption. That did not happen. It took 7 days of excruciating pain for it to pass. At that point, I had gone through about 40, 50 Norcos, I kept throwing them up from the pain, and honestly welcomed the world to open up and swallow me whole. Then boom, I passed it. Instant relief. No pain whatsoever once passed. I have 2 more stuck in one of my kidneys, and I pray that they never move or try to pass because I honestly don't know if I could do it again. The pain is indescribable, and a lot of women say it is worse than natural childbirth. If you are also an unfortunate member of this club that nobody wants to be a part of, I feel your pain. I've had gallstones, and the pain is very similar to kidney stones, but you don't pass them, so you don't have that pain. I thought it was a 10 on the scale of 1. 10. Then my gallbladder ruptured. Organs exploding need a whole new scale for the pain. I was screaming in pain. Got a dose of morphine in the ambulance, then they called in to get permission from a doctor to give a second dose. When I got wheeled into A and E, I got a 3rd dose. It took the edge off just enough that I could focus on answering questions, but it took another day or so to become bearable. Although I don't remember a lot of that time for obvious reasons. And by then, I couldn't breathe as they hadn't figured out what was wrong and my lungs were running out of room to expand thanks to the fluid starting to fill my chest cavity. Chest drains are a wonderful thing and provide instant relief FYI. I have never experienced any treatment that so immediately changes how you feel. It ruptured just over a week before I was scheduled to have it removed. I left the hospital the day I should have been walking into the day surgery unit. They couldn't operate until it had fully healed a year later. And your gallbladder rupturing doesn't even get rid of the damn gallstones, which seems very unfair to me. So I had more attacks over that year. Yup, a kidney stone was the worst pain by far that I've ever experienced. It's difficult to even describe. Interestingly, the pain usually associated with kidney stones is not the meatus, which is what I always assumed, but flank pain. What's happening is the stone gets stuck in the ureter, the tube going from your kidney to your bladder, which causes urine to get backed up. This essentially feels like someone is squeezing your kidney with their hand as hard as they can. There's no relief until that thing drops into your bladder. From there, it will usually just pass on its own with no problem. The reason for this is the urethra is a wider tube than the ureter. However, I guess with those spiked stones, they can get stuck in the urethra. So yeah, I experienced one kidney stone like a decade ago, and it's the worst pain I ever experienced. A somewhat distant second is tooth-related pain. I wouldn't wish a kidney stone on my worst enemy. Oh, yikes! I've had a few small ovarian cysts rupture over the years, and the pain is horrible. Luckily, mine have all been small and didn't require any surgery, but I'll never forget how bad they hurt. I can't imagine having a severe one like that. I feel for you, and I'm so glad you're okay now. You're a champ for getting through all of that. Hopefully, you never have to experience anything even remotely close to that again. Hugs! Tooth infection. It hurts so much my entire existence just revolved around trying to lessen the pain in any way. I literally couldn't think of anything else. I spent a week calling every single. The dentist begged them to pull my tooth out. No one would help me. There is no way to get emergency dental care. WTF. Finally, an angel from heaven said come on in on a Saturday. He did a pulpectomy and I was finally out of pain. Eventually, I just had the tooth extracted because I had such an awful ordeal with it that I didn't even want it anymore. No joke, I needed to get a wisdom tooth taken out before I could get braces. Called around. American dentists had a 3-month backlog. Went to Mexico and got it done the same day. The doctor even said it was an easy job because I only had one tooth and it was already out. It just needed a good pull. I dealt with this by not being able to see any dentist. I pulled my tooth out with vice grips and a flathead screwdriver because I was in so much pain and couldn't see a dentist. The pain of pulling it wasn't much different than the pain it was already in, and words can't describe the relief. I have zero trouble believing this. I'm impressed, though. I was begging my husband to grab the pliers. There need to be emergency dentists, WTF. I called medical universities' dental divisions in the city near me, and they told me they could only see me on short notice if I was having trouble breathing or spiked a fever, aka started to go septic from the infection spreading into the bone. Nice. From an abscessed tooth can easily kill you, so you would think it wouldn't be treated differently than any other medical emergency. Ugh, I was told the same thing about being seen on short notice, and I even lied over the phone and said I had a fever just desperate to be seen. And then they said I would have to go to the emergency room for antibiotics. But they still couldn't see me. I'm glad you got your teeth taken care of. I wouldn't wish dental issues on my worst enemy. I would concur. Supposedly pancreatitis is on par with childbirth, but have no way to compare pancreatitis was a thing for me, but didn't compare to the tooth infection I had when I was 20, many moons ago. Some friends and I had our annual river trip planned for the upcoming weekend, and I would say, I started having pain on Tuesday of that week. I couldn't get into my dentist until the following week, so I said, get it, I would be okay. By Friday and into Saturday, my pain was fierce, intense, and unimaginable. I pounded vodka all weekend and ate a ton of Advil. By Monday morning, my right eye was swollen shut, and my dentist damn near had a heart attack when he saw me. Sent me straight to the hospital where doctors installed some sort of draining device on the outside and inside of my mouth and hit me with IV antibiotics just so they could treat it. I ended up dropping my summer term classes and never went back to school that year. This was also the beginning of my love affair with opiates and debilitating 20-plus-year addiction. The pain from the tooth infection I had during my first pregnancy was worse than labor. I remember at one point I went to sit in my front room kitchen BC. I wanted to distract myself by watching TV. It didn't work, I remember, her at one point sort of bashing my head on the couch and just quietly crying stop over and over again. At one point I got up to go for a wee and just had this sharp pain run down my jaw. It stopped me in my tracks, and I must have made some sort of noise. BC, my partner, came rushing in as he thought I'd gone into labor. Like, labor is painful, but compared to that toothache, I'd take labor again any day. I will be in labor within the next month or so. And what sucks is here in the UK, not sure about other countries. If you have a dental emergency, you have to phone either your dentist or the dental emergency helpline if it's a weekend, or if you don't have a dentist. They aren't open in the middle of the night, and neither are dental surgeries, or at least none local to me. You can't just walk into an Andy if you're having severe tooth pain. I remember bawling to my partner and saying that if I was experiencing this level of pain anywhere else, I'd be able to go get help, no matter the time. Ended up going to the useless dentist and then walking into my GP surgery and just asking for an emergency apt with my GP, luckily got one, and my GP did what he could and prescribed me some strong cocodamol for the pain. And I spent the next month or two feeling spacey and sick, but not in pain. Same thing here. It was in school. Almost unbearable, and got even worse after the first doctor I went to merely opened up the tooth to take one look at the infection and decided she was in over her head. She said they would get me an appointment at a specialist clinic in 2 weeks. I was so far gone that I just went home and accepted that for 2 weeks I would miss school and live from ibuprofen to ibuprofen. But when I told my mother, she went into the very best kind of Karen mode, called up the specialist clinic, and got me an appointment the next day. After the whole ordeal was done, the doctors even congratulated me because I hadn't screamed or cried. I shed a few tears, though, not gonna lie. Apparently, they ran out of the tiny sponges they used to soak up the pus and had to improvise with paper. All the narcotics didn't really help either. My entire face was numb, but I could still feel the pain somehow. Anyway, thank you for sharing. I snapped my Achilles tendon during a rock climbing fall. I was bouldering. I was about 15 feet off the deck and fell. The falling isn't what hurt me, though. I had a few pads stacked and my heel landed between them and bent my toes to my shin. If you're worried about a bouldering fall, just make sure you have some good padding and don't land between them, and you'll be fine. At least you snapped yours while doing something active and cool. I walked downstairs wrong in my own house after a few hours of cleaning and snapped mine. I felt it pop. I went faint and had to hop to the toilet to be sick. Literally couldn't put weight on it, and it didn't hurt for 5 minutes, so I thought it was just a sprain. Then the pain kicked in. Spent a literal week on my sofa. Can confirm awful experience. At least you only snapped one. I snapped both of mine at the same time while in hospital for another health issue. They just asked me to prove I could walk so that they could discharge me for Christmas, and as soon as I got back to where I was sitting, I collapsed, screaming my lungs out. It felt like I slipped, and I'm petrified of it happening again. I couldn't even rest my feet on the floor for 2.5 months, by which time I'd actually been on the ventilator for other health issues, and while I was on it, they gave me these fluffy boots to wear to hold my ankles in a better position for them to heal. And then had to start walking again so I could leave hospital, but I was so terrified it would happen again, I didn't even want to rest my feet on the floor. Oh, and I also got cellulitis in the right one while I was out of the hospital for Christmas, and it turned black. I still have a gray scar there now with some mild swelling that never properly went away even once I got antibiotics. Edit. It took a full 6 months before I could walk normally without pain, and 2.5 months to be able to walk without a limp. This happened Christmas 2020 into 2021, so going to the hospital was not an option either, and I had to look after my gran with dementia as well. Luckily, my dad took over for the week while I was on bed rest, but I didn't have a choice but to walk on it sooner rather than later, as I had to care for my Nan. 'Cause my dad didn't want to deal with the women's stuff. Poor Nan didn't have a shower for 10 days, bless her. Somehow, however, it healed right, but it took so long. Funny, my dad tore his playing indoor as well, except he was like 50 and definitely shouldn't have been playing, but don't tell him that. I was watching the game, and when it happened, he whipped around 180 and started yelling at a person who wasn't there for a second or two. Later in the hospital, he told me it hurt so bad he was 100% convinced somebody had snuck up behind him and cracked him in the back of the leg with a baseball bat, which explained why he was yelling at nobody. Damn, I've got to go against this. I've ruptured mine and don't define it as being painful at all. The initial trauma and injury, yes. Mine felt like somebody hit me hard in the back of my ankle with a tennis racket. Painful, yes, but not debilitating in any way. There are no nerve endings attached to the Achilles, so afterward, there wasn't any pain at all. My foot just didn't work the way it should, no matter how hard I tried. I even went skiing for a week with it still ruptured. I'm not saying it's a cakewalk injury, but it shouldn't even be an honorable mention for most painful. Damn, that's bad. I was expecting an indoor bouldering thing, but this is a lot worse than I expected. At least it was bouldering, though, and not a lead climbing accident. Getting stuck on a big climb is absolutely awful. I'm lucky it's never happened to me, and I'm lucky you are good now. Thank you for sharing. I've been getting migraines for 27 years now. A headache is a mild little guy, usually in my temple, sometimes behind my eye. Take acetaminophen, a cup of coffee, some water, and boom. Dealt with. A tension headache is awful. It turns my neck tendons into solid rebar and muscles into stone. It pulls on my scalp and forehead. This needs hot plus cold treatment, massage, and muscle relaxants. Migraines are a different beast. Colors become brighter and have more colors on top. Every sound has a color, every flavor has a color, and every smell and thought bombards me with overwhelmingly bright spots of color. Or black and white. I've sat in the tub and watched my hands disappear in front of my eyes, taken over by black. Every sound is a knife in the ear. Nothing stays down, dehydrating to dangerous levels after 36 hours of vomiting from the pain. Sometimes the little headaches are a sign of things to come, and my attempts to stop them are futile. Getting on top of the little ones as quickly as possible has become my #1 migraine preventative, but it certainly hasn't cured them. I always thought my migraines were bad. I mean, you'd think going completely blind followed by a headache that feels like an axe through the head is pretty severe, right? Then I started talking to other people about their migraines. And I realized mine are pretty mild, short, and infrequent in comparison. Mine have gotten more frequent in my 40s, but less severe. Sometimes I get a blinding aura, but no headache follows. And now I know there's a specific kind of tension in my neck that tells me I better go lay in the dark with some ice packs if I don't want my whole day ruined. I scrolled through this post just to find this. Mine start with auras and gradually become full-blown migraines. Mine were always weeks apart, but when the episode hits, it hits. I become physically incapable of doing the simplest things. I lose sight of my blind spot and I can't talk or sit up straight. I spend 3 days with severe tenderness in my temples and eye sockets after the fact. Light, noise, smells, and even just touching my head becomes extremely painful. They're not fun. The only time I had a break from them was during my pregnancy LOL. I eventually realized that they had multiple causes: hormonal, stress, certain foods, caffeine, etc. I also got rebound headaches from taking aspirin ibuprofen to get rid of the pain. They would start as milder headaches and either go away or progress into a migraine. Getting old took care of the hormonal and stress parts, and I'm careful about caffeine in the foods I eat. I stopped taking painkillers at the first sign of pain and relaxed rested if I could to avoid the rebounds. Same since I was a kid. Hundreds of them by now. Some lasted 2 or 3 days without relief, back when there were no effective medications. The frequency subsided a bit after age 60, but I still get them a few times a year. Trigeminal neuralgia, migraine, cluster headache. I've heard all 3 diagnoses from different neurologists. I'd estimate the pain at 9/10. Feels like someone jamming a corkscrew in my eyeball and wiggling it around. Some of the other experiences described here sound worse than my worst head pains. I've never had a kidney stone or some of the other problems folks have described here, and hope I never do. Sounds miserable. These headaches don't respond to opiates, so it's a waste of time going to an ER or urgent care unless they have Imitrex, sumatriptan, or comparable meds. I have a prescription now, but back in the 1970s to 80s, those headaches were miserable, and all they could offer was an ergotamine med, which barely helped. In comparison, I've been hit by cars twice. The first incident cracked vertebrae in my neck, thoracic, and lumbar spine. The second time broke and dislocated my shoulder. Grade 4 separation, not the worst. I declined fentanyl in the ambulance or morphine in the ER. I did ask for 1 hydrocodone, which they gave me. The medical crews always seemed surprised that I declined the strong stuff, but I've always had a delayed pain reaction to injury. I'd bet it's a fairly common quirk in athletes in full-contact sports. Otherwise, we'd find a different activity. But my pain from injuries usually hits a day or 2 later. Same with broken ribs from sports injuries. Crushed finger from a machine accident. Stabbed in the side. Usually doesn't bother me immediately. I had them as a child. Like 6, 13 years old. It wasn't until I was watching videos of people experiencing cluster headaches, beating at their own heads like they were trying to dislodge something, that I saw people experiencing the kinds of pain I went through. What a horror for someone so young to endure, and how horrific that I had to endure them alone because my nurse mother was also head of the household and the only nurturer available, and she had herself and 3 other people between adult to baby to take care of ahead of me. Thank you for sharing. Had a 3rd-degree burn on my leg. A massage clinic put a hot stone wrapped in a towel under my calves as part of a massage I asked for. I wanted a massage, but they did this first for some reason. Left it there for a half hour and cooked my flesh so badly it took almost 5 months to heal. I had to go to the burn specialist each month, and he would debride the wound. That's essentially cutting out the cooked flesh from your leg. It's done without any pain relief or freezing. I screamed bloody murder down the hall so all the other patients could hear me. Then I had to go home each time, let it grow upwards for a month, and he'd do it again. The first time he debrided my leg and I taught everyone in the waiting room my fancy vocabulary was insane. Then that night around 2 a.m. my prescription for pain relief wore off, only gave me 1 pain relief pill to take home. I sat there in the dark suffering the pain of the debridement, too afraid to go to the hospital for help because my wife and relatively newborn baby were sleeping in another room, and I didn't want to frighten them by going to the hospital. Yes, it was irrational thinking, but I was in crazy pain. My wife did that too, except it was a curling iron. She already didn't have a good feeling in her hands, so she grabbed it and held it for 5 seconds. Oh God, that's awful. I nailed myself with my curling iron a couple of months ago, just accidentally touching it to my thumb for about 1.5 seconds, and got a 3 RD-degree burn. How do I know? It didn't hurt much right away. I was in a hurry to get to work, so I didn't even take the time to run cold water on it. Stupid. Got to work and it started to hurt badly. Then more and more. We have burn gel in our Cintas kit, so I made it through the day with slathering that on. It wasn't a big spot, pencil eraser size, but mofo hurt. I have prescription burn cream at home, so I used that for a couple of weeks, and it finally calmed down. If I hadn't already had the cream, I would have gone to the doctor, but I made it through. Now I just have an ugly scar. Curling irons are no joke. Be careful out there, ladies. That sounds so bad. I just don't understand why you went through that pain when you never deserved to. I hope you are doing better now, and I hope you heal soon, my friend. Stay strong. Thank you for sharing. Childbirth. I remember staring at the window and thinking I'd jump out to make the pain stop. Several years ago, I had an impacted kidney stone. The nurse said, "I've heard it hurts worse than labor." The kidney stone was a cakewalk compared to giving birth. I have never come so close to the edge of losing my mind as I did while screaming during childbirth. It was hell. Have a nice case of PTSD from it too. I've also given birth and had a kidney stone. The kidney stone I remember being awful, but childbirth is fuzzy. When I think of it now, it feels like an out-of-body experience. I think your brain must block it out. I had a kidney stone before I gave birth, and I had also heard that kidney stones are worse, so I went into birth nervous, but thinking I'd already done worse. I was wrong. I was in level 10 agony for 14 hours during my induction. It felt like the baby was clawing its way out, only she didn't know how to get out, so she was escaping through my lungs. I felt so close to the end and happily elected for a C-section after so much constant pain. I have no interest in childbirth ever again. I'm so sorry you had to go through all of that. Childbirth can really be a painful experience for people. I hope everything is going smoothly for you in life. Snowmobile crash going 45 miles per hour in Vail, Colorado. Flew over the handlebars and off a steep drop about 500 feet below. Landed first on my head, then my butt, hard. Rolled a little further. Screamed bloody murder when I came to a stop. Just unimaginable pain. I had cut my right leg badly and suffered a spinal injury. I was wearing a helmet, a damn good one, Bell brand. It was shattered, but my skull was not. I was paralyzed waist down only for a few hours. I was lucky. However, my spinal cord took over 2 years to heal, and I spent that time in a harness, then a wheelchair. Went to Mayo Clinic many times. They saved my legs. After the 2 years, I could barely walk, but with 3 more years of physical therapy, I fully recovered. My back still hurts like hell, but you learn to live with it. Recently took up weight training and lifted 210 pounds with my legs. I have to tell you, just sharing that with you makes me cry tears of joy. To have experienced this and be able to not only walk but to be stronger than I was 30 years ago makes me very happy. That's an insane recovery. I'm surprised you were ever able to walk again. I hope now you feel great, interesting story. Thank you. In 2006, while in the Marines in Fallujah, I got hurt in a combat situation. I won't get into detail about all of what happened. My injuries were pretty bad, but not life-threatening. My tibia and fibula were broken badly and busted through the skin, along with a little shrapnel and some burns on different parts of my body. We were pretty far away from the base when it happened and was about a 3 HR drive back. We didn't have any meds for me. Other brothers needed them. They loaded me into the back of a Humvee, and that's where the real pain started. If anyone has been to a place like that, they know the roads aren't roads, just lanes of potholes. I had 2 guys trying to hold my leg steady, and I know they did the best they could, but everything was bouncing. So much leg was going all over the place, bouncing and cutting me. The best I can describe it is breaking your leg 500 times over. Passed out but regained consciousness almost immediately multiple times. I know that childbirth is supposed to be the worst pain imaginable, and I don't claim to know, since a dude and all, but I think I have at least a pretty solid idea. Lots of metal rods and screws, but my surgeon did a great job, and unless I told you or showed the scars, you would probably have no idea. Damn, I'm sorry you had to experience that. Hope you have recovered and now you feel pretty good. Besides, the war is a hell, so thank you for your story and your serve.